The global wearables market hit $95 billion last year. Over 500 million people are now walking around with a device on their wrist, tracking their heart rate, their sleep stages, their stress levels, their oxygen saturation, their readiness to exist. And here's the uncomfortable question nobody selling you one of these things wants to ask. Is any of it actually working? Some of it is, most of it isn't. Let's sort out which is which. In this video, we're going to do something the wearable companies would rather we didn't. We're going to look at the actual science behind these devices. We'll cover what HRV really measures and why the trend matters more than the number. We'll talk about what the research says step tracking actually does to your health. And we'll go through the claims that sound good, but don't hold up when you read the studies. Stress detection, illness prediction, blood oxygen accuracy, the readiness score. By the end, you'll know exactly which features to pay attention to, which ones to ignore, and whether a $400 ring or a $300 watch is actually worth it for someone who doesn't have a chronic condition. The pitch is straightforward. Wear this device. It learns your body. It tells you when you're recovered and ready to push, and when you need to rest. It catches illness before you feel sick. It monitors your heart, your sleep, your stress, and your oxygen. Continuously, passively, 24/7. It's your personal health dashboard. And look, that's a genuinely compelling idea. The problem isn't the concept. The problem is that the gap between what these devices claim to measure and what they can actually measure reliably is much wider than the marketing suggests. So let's go feature by feature, starting with the one that has the strongest science behind it. Heart rate variability, HRV, is the time variation between individual heartbeats. Your heart doesn't beat like a metronome. The intervals between beats fluctuate constantly, and that fluctuation is actually a good sign. It means your autonomic nervous system, the part that regulates recovery, stress response, and cardiovascular function, is working properly and adapting dynamically. Low HRV, on the other hand, is associated with chronic stress, poor recovery, cardiovascular disease risk, and overtraining in athletes. This isn't new or niche. Sports scientists have been using HRV to guide elite athlete training loads for decades. Your favorite sports team's coaching staff has almost certainly been tracking this in some form since the 2000s. So, consumer wearables didn't invent HRV, they just brought it to your wrist. Here's what the science says about what HRV tracking from a consumer device can actually tell you. Trends, not snapshots. A single HRV reading means almost nothing. Your HRV on any given morning can swing dramatically based on whether you had one drink last night, whether you were slightly dehydrated, whether your room was too warm. The signal is noisy at the individual measurement level. What matters is your baseline, the rolling 7 to 14-day average, and how far you deviate from it. If your HRV has been sitting at 55 milliseconds for the past 2 weeks and it drops to 38 overnight, that's meaningful information. Something is different. You're stressed, you're sick, you drank alcohol, you trained too hard. Your nervous system is telling you it's under load. That's genuinely useful data. The catch is this: most people check their HRV the same way they check Instagram. They look at the daily number, see a readiness score of 52, feel bad about it, and then ignore it after 3 weeks because it's stressful. That's not how this tool was designed to be used. HRV tracking works if you use it to identify patterns over time. Like noticing your HRV systematically tanks every Sunday night, which might tell you something interesting about how you spend Sundays. Or noticing it drops sharply the week of a major deadline. What it doesn't work well for is making micro decisions about today's workout based on this morning's number. Bottom line on HRV: scientific support is real, meaningful as a trend tool, oversold as a daily oracle. Nobody puts step tracking on the cover of a biohacking magazine. It's not exciting. There's no proprietary algorithm, no quarterly firmware update, no influencer making a YouTube video about it. But here's the thing. Step tracking might be the most evidence-backed feature on any wearable you own. Multiple large studies, with tens of thousands of participants tracked over years, show a clear dose-response relationship between daily step count and mortality risk. Getting from 4,000 steps to 8,000 steps per day is associated with meaningfully lower rates of cardiovascular disease, and meta-analyses confirm that simply tracking activity with a device increases the amount of activity sedentary people do. That's behavioral psychology doing real work. The act of measurement changes behavior. You look at your wrist at 9 p.m., you're 2,000 steps short, and you take a walk. You weren't going to do that without the nudge. Is 10,000 the magic number? No. That figure came from a 1960s Japanese pedometer marketing campaign, not science. The research suggests 7,000 to 9,000 steps is where most of the mortality benefit is captured. But this is real. The step counter on your $30 Fitbit has better human outcome data behind it than the annual costs of many supplements. Now let's talk about the features that sound impressive in the demo and fall apart when you read the studies. Stress detection. Every major wearable brand now has some version of a stress score or body battery. The pitch is that the device can tell when you're stressed before you know it yourself. Here's the problem. These scores are derived from a combination of HRV, heart rate, and accelerometer data, wrapped in a proprietary algorithm. The algorithms are not published. They're not independently validated against clinical stress measures. One independent 2023 review found accuracy rates barely better than chance for detecting real-world psychological stress. Blood oxygen. Consumer wrist-based SpO₂ sensors have had a rough few years in the research. Multiple studies found meaningful accuracy issues, particularly on individuals with darker skin tones, where optical sensors consistently overestimate oxygen saturation. The FDA has been increasingly vocal about this. For monitoring sleep apnea screening or high-altitude exposure, some devices have shown reasonable performance, but the precision isn't there for clinical decision-making. Illness detection. Several wearables claim to detect illness before you feel symptoms. There's actually some interesting preliminary data here. Resting heart rate elevation and HRV suppression do sometimes precede overt illness by 24 to 48 hours. But the operative word is retrospectively. Prospective detection has not been validated in large-scale independent trials. These features are speculative in practice. Readiness scores. Every brand has a version. Combine sleep, HRV, resting heart rate, and activity history into a single score that tells you whether to push or rest. The reality is that these composite scores are proprietary formulas that have not been independently validated against performance outcomes in large-scale peer-reviewed trials. No wearable company has published a robust, randomized control trial showing that athletes who follow their readiness score have better outcomes than athletes who use their own perceived exertion. And here's the thing that doesn't get discussed enough. Research shows that when people are told they slept poorly, even when they objectively slept fine, their cognitive performance the next day gets measurably worse. It's called orthosomnia. Your score might not just be inaccurate. In some cases, it may be actively creating the problem it promises to solve. Let's talk money. An Oura Ring runs $299 to $399 for the hardware, plus a $6 a month subscription that's essentially required to access most of the data. Year one, you're looking at $370 to $470. Whoop is subscription only, around $30 a month, roughly $360 per year. Apple Watch Ultra, $799. Garmin Fenix, $600 to $900. These are not trivial costs. If you're an athlete or training seriously, HRV trending is genuinely useful for managing load and avoiding overtraining. Elite coaches use this. It's not pseudoscience. If you're sedentary and the only thing a wearable does is remind you to move, that's enough. A $100 device that gets you from 3,000 to 8,000 steps per day is one of the best health investments you can make. Who should probably skip it? If you're prone to health anxiety, or if you know you'd refresh the app obsessively, a wearable may do more harm than good. The science is clear. Obsessive tracking correlates with worse sleep, not better. If you're expecting clinical accuracy for stress, illness, or oxygen saturation, that's not what you're getting. You're getting consumer-grade sensors with sophisticated marketing. And if you're a generally healthy adult who sleeps well, moves enough, and has no chronic conditions, the practical benefit is marginal. Links to the devices mentioned are in the description below. Here's where we land on wearables. Two things work well, and the research is clear on both. HRV trend tracking over time as a guide to recovery load, and step counting as a behavioral nudge to move more. Those two features alone justify a mid-range device for the right person. The rest, the readiness scores, the stress detection, the illness prediction, the sleep staging precision, the blood oxygen numbers. These are features in development masquerading as features in completion. They're directionally interesting. They are not clinically validated tools. The most honest summary of the wearable industry right now is this. The sensors are real. The data is partial. The algorithms are proprietary, and the marketing has run significantly ahead of the science. That doesn't mean these devices are useless. It means you should use them as orientation tools, not diagnostic instruments. Look at your HRV trend, not today's number. Use the step count to get the right amount of exercise per day, not to diagnose your nervous system. And if a readiness score is making you anxious rather than informed, take it off for a week. You might sleep better. If you found this useful, that's exactly what we're building here on Hype versus Hack. Every episode takes a claim from the longevity and biohacking world and asks a simple question. What does the evidence actually say? We spend the time reading the research so you don't have to. To help keep this channel independent, some of the links in the description may be affiliate links. If you choose to buy through one of them, it helps support the channel at no additional cost to you. Just as importantly, we don't work for any of the companies featured in these videos. We aren't paid to recommend their products, and none of them get to review or influence what we publish. The devices in today's video were selected simply because they represent a good cross-section of what's currently available in the wearable market, not because they're sponsors. If that's the kind of analysis you're looking for, consider subscribing. Over the next few videos, we'll be taking the same evidence-first approach to a range of popular health, longevity, and performance topics, looking at what's supported by good evidence, what's still uncertain, and where the marketing has gotten ahead of the science. And if you'd like something practical to take away from today's episode, we've created a one-page HRV and wearables guide. It summarizes what to track, what to ignore, how to build a meaningful HRV baseline, and when wearable data is actually worth acting on. You can download it free by subscribing to our newsletter with your email address. The newsletter is completely free, and it's where we'll also share future evidence summaries, updated one-pagers, and new research as it comes out. The link is in the description. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode of Hype versus Hack.